Hey, everybody. Um, when I was in my early 20s, an older man who was making a play for me, very wealthy older man, I might add, explained to me that money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you something so close that even the experts have trouble telling them apart. And I was really captivated. I'm not with the old dude and his money, but with the concept of a happiness expert. And little did I know 30 years later, fast forward, but we're we're getting ahead of ourselves. I'm going to do something I've never done before. People have been asking me a lot lately, how did I come to be here and how did I know how to do what I do? So I'm going to give you as quick a version of my life as I possibly can give. My name is Jane Gordon. I'm an artist, and I'm invited here on the ship to show and sell my jewelry. And I was asked to give a seminar about my work. So to tell you about my work, I'm going to tell you real quick about me and my past. I grew up in Philadelphia, just outside Philadelphia, in an area called the Main Line. And if you've ever seen the movie Philadelphia Story with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn, that home is about a mile from where I live. And these are the two women who raised me. I'm going to forego political correctness for historical correctness, and I'm going to tell you this is my white mama and my chocolate mama. Rose was with our family for 60 years. Grew up in the Everglades. She only went as far as second grade, but she was absolute pure love, and I was very lucky to have her with me in my life. Well, despite appearances, my family was not a part of that country club martini swilling, NJA set because my parents were left wing radical Jewish intellectuals. My father is a lawyer. My mother is, this is her, Tammy. She is an architect, an anthropologist, a lawyer. She has a postdoctorate in taxation, and she's a very, very talented artist. No people skills whatsoever, and incapable of earning a living, but very, very well educated. My parents had a lot of very radical ideas, and none of the children in the neighborhood were allowed to play with us, but it didn't really matter because I was such a big dork that nobody wanted to play with me. I went through a very awkward phase, buck teeth, chubby cheeks, Coke bottle glasses. The only thing thicker than my glasses were the books I carried everywhere because I was absolutely mesmerized with books. With books, I could go anywhere. And by the time I was 6 years old, I got on stage, and on stage, I could be anybody. So I was just off on my own. In fact, by the time I was in fourth grade, the teacher said I wasn't permitted to take fairy tales and magic books out of the library anymore because it wasn't realistic. So they handed me Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. So in principle, I handed it back. I picked up the complete works of Shakespeare, and that was my introduction to reality. Well, a couple of years go by, and this summer between sixth grade and seventh grade, when I was switching schools, I grew 5 inches. The glasses came off, the braces came off, the belly fat slimmed down a little bit. Um, I traded in Shakespeare for Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Karl Marx, Timothy Leary, Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman. You know the story. It was the late 60s, early 70s. I quit my theater group and joined Student Mobilization Committee, peace rallies, demonstrations. And this is actually some of my neighbors at the beach. This is me at about 12, 13 years old. And by 14, things were not so good at home. And I was thinking, I'm out of here. And so I got a job, saved some money, took a train from Philadelphia to Newark, New Jersey, walked up to a girl that looked sort of like me in the airport, told her I lost my student card. And that's how I flew to Puerto Rico under somebody else's name, making my escape. Um, 14 years old. I thought I was very grown up. A couple of things that not so good happened in Puerto Rico. The police put me back on a plane, sent me back to Philadelphia. I didn't want to go back to the public school, and my parents allowed me to go to a very small experimental school called Miquon, and it's sort of me back there in the corner. That's my older brother. I got three brothers. Anyway, Miquon, I will tell you, in many, many ways saved my life. And so that was seventh, eighth, ninth. I'm sorry, ninth to 12th grade. New York University had seen me do an acting audition, and they sent me a letter saying, "You've been accepted to New York University. Please send your application." And I was very flattered, so I wound up in New York. This is me with my three brothers. And I love drama, but some days after I got there, I met a graduate student who was in a new field called physiological psychology, which is a biological basis of behavior, how chemicals and hormones affect behavior, how the brain communicates with the body. And I immediately switched majors. I kept doing the acting, but I thought, wow, I am going to understand people on a molecular level. I'm not going to be confused anymore. And I really loved reading lab journals, but I discovered after 3 years that I didn't really like doing lab research very much. And I was taking different classes. Um, but I was thinking, I don't have enough information about the world to make a decision what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I made the decision to be a leaf in the wind. And if anybody would invite me somewhere, I'll just go and see what's going on. And so when a school friend invited me to go to London to her engagement party, I got up and I left. And that's how I wound up in London, which was originally meant to be 5 days, and I wound up staying 6 years. Well, I had lots of different jobs that I can get without a work permit. I met a guy named Bernie Kornfeld. Do you, any of you remember Bernie, iOS, Robert Vesco, living off of the 12-mile coast on his yacht? Anyway, I met Bernie when he was preparing his court case in Geneva, but he was very sweet to me, sort of like Sally Tomato in Breakfast at Tiffany's. He was very good to me. And he got acquitted, and he disappeared off to LA, and his lawyer invited me to go move to Switzerland. So I moved to Geneva, and he had a house in Geneva, a house in Zermatt. Things didn't work out so well with him. I found myself back in London after getting the name on the ski slopes Calamity Jane, and he and I are actually still friends. And so I found myself back in London. I did all sorts of jobs. I worked for 20th Century Fox doing script reading and writing critiques and analysis. I did charity fundraising. I did promotions. And eventually Her Majesty implied, maybe strongly, that 6 years on a 6-month visa was extremely rude and that I might want to get on the next plane and head back to New York. So it was time to get serious about my work. I found myself back in New York. Now, I don't have a picture of myself from then, but I wound up working in commercial real estate, and I wanted to give you some kind of an image just to look at. This is a group of guys that I worked with. I didn't work in this company, but this is what the brokers looked like at the time. I think out of 3,000 New York brokers doing what I did, there were 2 others that were women. So they were all guys in blue, gray, and black suits and ties. And I loved a designer called Terry Mugler. So this is not me, but that is a Terry Mugler suit. And I wore these very bright, you can't afford me suits and pranced around in the commercial real estate industry. And I was actually pretty stably working up in my career for about 8 or 9 years. And I met a guy, got engaged, moved to Rome. And that was a disaster emotionally and financially, but it was a fun adventure. This is actually me in the Vatican, in the chair where the Pope gets his crown. Nobody's supposed to be there and there aren't any guards. That's how I happened to be, take any picture I wanted. And anyway, lots of other things happened. And as I said, emotional, financial disaster. And I went back to London. An old friend of mine offered me a job working for a real estate development he was building in Portugal. He flew me back and forth. When I found out what they pay in Portugal, I was like, okay, I'm back. I'm out of here. Back to New York. No, I was really taking jobs more for the fun of it than financial stability. I took a job. Actually, I met Alfred Taubman. I don't know if you know who he is, self-made real estate billionaire who went to prison for a year for price fixing the art world. He was president of Sotheby's. And Alfred had some developments in Azerbaijan. He sent me there, and I really liked that. That would have been a good financial move. But again, bad man-related decision. I started dating an investment banker who had some projects in South Africa. So he said, why don't you come work with us there? I love South Africa. He flew me down there. I found myself having dinner with Winnie Mandela in her house in Johannesburg. But anyway, back in New York, those projects never really materialized because we were underfinanced. And I met some other guys who I thought were really goofy, and they were developing very high-end luxury resorts. So I took a job with them knowing they'd never break ground, but they wanted to show me all the resorts in Guadeloupe and Belgium and Paris and Perugia and Italy. So I thought, oh, that's very pleasant. So I flew around with them until they financially crashed. And then I went back into office leasing that I knew how to do. And eventually I had an idea for a business when I was in college. And I opened a company called Wish Brokers. My motto is we sell wish fulfillment because I think everybody's 3 phone calls away, and I'm very creative, so I figured I can always figure out how to get everything done, and people just lack confidence. But I didn't know how to promote it. And the whole .com thing had started. So I left my job and I went to a .com to see how people made money online. And I sat there for a year scratching my head saying, I do not see how these people are going to make any money, because I didn't realize they didn't want to make money. They only wanted to cash it out in the capital markets. I watched them burn through $40 million. The whole .com thing crashed, and I got laid off, but I couldn't afford to be laid off because all of the adventure and bad financial decisions. So I was $250,000 in debt with $32 left to my name and no credit. And November and December, I sold corporate gifts, which fit in with the whole wish broker thing, and I love doing that, very high-end, luxurious corporate gifts. But it was January, and I thought, well, it's a long time till next Christmas, but Valentine's Day coming, and I'll just borrow jewelry and take it to all the guys I know in the corporate world, and I'll get through Valentine's Day, and then I'll figure out this other corporate gift business. I didn't know anyone in the jewelry business to loan me jewelry, but one guy loaned me gemstone beads, and I went home with all these beads in every gemstone you can imagine and sat down with them around me with the light and the energy and the color. And I remember very strongly having this thought that said, I want to do this. And I didn't know what this was, but that is how I became an accidental jewelry designer. It would have been so much easier if I could have just told you I always wanted to be a jewelry designer, and I could have just got on showing you all the pictures, but that's how I started. So the first year or so, I just called everybody I knew and asked them to come in, come in, look at my work. Hi, honey, what are you doing for Valentine's Day? Get your friends together. Hi, honey, Dana's birthday's coming up. If you don't come and look at my work, I'm going to be cross. Hi, sweetie. Well, after about a year, I got into Saks Fifth Avenue, and I went around the country showing my work at all the Saks Fifth Avenue stores. Former .com worker. I was getting lots of good press. Here's me in New York City in the window of Saks Fifth Avenue. They had all my jewelry on display. And I, kept finding myself in magazines, which was a surprise because I don't really even read magazines. Anyway, what happened? 2008, Saks burned through $98.5 million that year. Now, I had decided that it was a bad idea to have just one customer, which turned out to be true because their answer was to dump all their small vendors. But unfortunately, what I did was I went with a very well-respected store called Fortunoff that had been around for about 100 years. Fortunoff went bankrupt the same week that I got booted out of Saks along with all the other small vendors, and I found myself with all this jewelry and no cash left because Fortunoff wiped me out again. And so I reinvented myself and I got on cruise ships. And that is how I come to be standing here in front of you, but that's only a part of the story. Now, the rest of the story, if you want to just step back for a minute to the part where I was 14 years old and I ran away from home. This is my high school diploma. You can't probably see it very well, but the second thing it says is for coming a long way from Puerto Rico. And the picture is a phoenix, because every year the phoenix dies in fire and is reborn. One of my teachers wanted to draw this personally. And as you can see from the story, every couple of years my life has fallen apart and become completely unrecognizable from what it was before. And the phoenix has turned out to be a very appropriate symbol for me. And anyway, I was so sad when the teachers got together. They had a teacher meeting when I first started that school. And they decided they always would meet about each student and set goals. And they decided if they could get me to smile in 4 years, that was going to be their goal for me. But they took a vote, and not one of them thought they could do it. So they took a backup vote to see if they could get eye contact with me. And they weren't so sure they could do that. Over the years I was there, I completely changed and, kind of blossomed and woke up. But I still was struggling so much all of my life till I was actually in my mid to late 30s. I always knew how to have fun and adventures, but I really truly believed that life was a sea of pain and misery, and it only had little islands of happiness just to show you what you couldn't have. Maybe you could take a rest there for a minute, but then it was back to the sea. And I searched and I struggled. In NYU, I was really lucky to have a professor named Jim Kars, and I took everything he taught. He taught religion, comparative religion, and philosophy. And I searched in all of the religions and all of the philosophies for answers. I spoke to spiritual leaders. I got initiated in transcendental meditation. I was very lucky that I discovered in my teenage years that drugs and alcohol weren't really going to get me where I wanted to go. And I just searched and searched and searched, and I could never really find a way to be happy. And I was really, really lucky to have an epiphany moment. I was with a boyfriend who was in AA, and I used to like going to the meetings with him. I don't know why, but I thought they were interesting. And because I was in so much pain, I used to project onto the people around me, and I'd have mean thoughts about people. And so this day, a woman walked in, and I thought, oh, she's a witch. I didn't say W, though. And then another guy came in, and I thought, God, he's so arrogant. And a third guy came in, and I thought he was just full of himself. And I was just sitting there having these mean thoughts. And if you've ever been in an AA meeting, people get up and share. It's like an emotional flasher. They just get up and they open their hearts and souls about whatever they're struggling with and whatever they've succeeded with. And they sit down again, and then they're regular people, just like marionettes in the background of your life, just like we all are. And by coincidence, the three people I had had bad thoughts about all got up and shared that day. And of course, I was so wrong about every one of them. And all of my life, I always just have a policy, do the right thing because it's the right thing. But I was really profoundly ashamed of myself because I realized that doing the right thing did not start in your actions. It didn't start in your skin. It starts in the very core of your soul and your heart and your thoughts. And I realized that I had to give everyone the benefit of every doubt and look for the best in every person. And it had this amazing unintended consequence. I found a buoyancy in my life that I had never experienced. But what happens? We fall back. We have to learn things over and over again. We get back into our old patterns. My friend Jack Zufeld explained it like this. He said, you can't expect to take a shower once and be clean forever. So I was very lucky not only to have an epiphany, but have like a backup epiphany. A couple weeks later, I was going to visit those hotel developers in Guadalupe, and it was bitter cold. I got in the taxi cab. It smelled so bad. If any of you have been in New York, you know you get those once in a while. And I couldn't open the window because it was so cold. And the cab driver was lost in Queens, and he couldn't find the airport. And I was furious. And my stomach hurt. My hands were shaking. Uh-oh. My stomach hurt. My hands were shaking. Is that on again? Sir? Okay. So my stomach hurt, my hands were shaking, and I was just hating this guy. I'm going to miss my plane. I'm going to miss my meetings. I was so angry at him, and I felt sick. Everything hurt in my body from the anger I was feeling. Well, on um, suddenly I noticed on the dashboard was a photograph of these two beautiful children, like with the gigantic eyes, like those paintings on black velvet. And I looked at his name, and he had one of these really long names that's all consonants. It doesn't have a vowel in it, and not one American could pronounce that name. And instead of being angry at him, I was just filled with admiration for this guy. What if I was born in some horrible, crappy country and I had to leave my whole support system, everybody I know and love, to make a better life for these beautiful children, and how much courage that probably took? And, all of a sudden, again, the unintended consequence, I went into this euphoric state. And I had this black mink coat that I'd won as a part of a commission in real estate. And I pulled my coat around me, and I opened up the window. We got to the airport. The plane had been delayed, so I didn't miss it. But then it was delayed and delayed and delayed. And I'm still walking around in this euphoric state. And I'm watching all these people screaming at the girl behind the counter, "You're ruining my weekend." And I realized, you're ruining your own weekend. And I was so calm and happy. And I bought a book, and I just sat there waiting. And we got down to San Juan, and I tried to get a quicker flight, but I had an 8-hour layover. I took my tote bag, my mink coat. I went to the San Juan Hilton, bought a bikini, had a wonderful day on the beach. I'm pretty sure I'm the only girl in San Juan with a black mink coat on the beach that day. And I went back to the airport. I missed all my meetings the first night. It didn't make any difference in my life. They caught me up with everything, but my life was changed. Now, one thing I realized is that I had to learn the things I got it, I was facing in the right direction for once, but I had to teach myself step by step how to be happy. I had to learn how to reboot my core, how to reboot my soul, how to practice on small things so that when the big things came along, I would know what to do. And then, of course, the first thing that happened is I turn around to my crazy family and I'm saying, you don't have to be this way. And I want to share everything I've learned, but I learned very early on you can't do that. You can't say you can't tell people what you see, but what you can do is kind of, be working with something else and just throw an idea over your shoulder. You can put something on the table talking about yourself or talking about a story, and when they're ready, if they're ready, then they'll pick it up. And the people that I'm passionate about finding are not necessarily people who are going to a spiritual leader or a psychiatrist trying to find happiness. The people I'm passionate about finding are the people that are just looking for an absence of pain the way I was. And then my real passion, because of course I can only meet just so many people, is to help inspire everybody else not only to find happiness, but to resonate outwards and help the people in your life. And so that is what I'm doing here. And that is what I'm going to tell you about. And I'm sorry that was a long story for what I could have just said. I always wanted to be a designer, but that wasn't true. So this is what I've learned, and this is how I've sort of summed it up. What I found actually, my messages, I wish I could say I was smart enough to have made a plan to fill my jewelry with symbolism and then let people ask me about the jewelry because it's beautiful and let that open up conversations. I really wish I was smart enough to do that, but that was a complete accident. The symbolism in my jewelry was really just something that I did that inspired different beautiful designs to enhance a woman's physical beauty. And I never even told anyone about it until I got on ships and they said, why don't you talk about your jewelry? And I was like, oh, all right, I'll just tell them about the symbolism. And I didn't know that it could help people and that keep paying it forward. So now, the first thing you have to do is you have to choose. And I went to one rabbi I was speaking to once. I mean, I was at my wit's end, and I was thinking, I just can't handle this anymore. I didn't want to be alive. I wanted to check out. And I just couldn't figure out how to make it look like an accident so nobody in my life would be upset with me or think it was their fault. And the rabbi said, you have to choose life. He said, in Judaism, you must choose life. And I wasn't so sure about that, but this design is inspired by DNA. Pearls are the only jewelry that we wear that was once a part of a living thing. So originally I was only going to use the little links inside with the pearls, but then I just thought the DNA strand is so beautiful, I made the whole strand into a necklace. And I have this in silver and gold. Choose life. But it's not just about choosing life. I was thinking, well, if you have to choose life, can't you choose happiness too? Maybe it is a choice, not a response. And this was just a little happy bird. And on the back it says, let's sing. I wanted to write, I'm so happy I'm singing, but my model maker didn't think he could fit all the words on the back. And as we choose things, I realize that we can choose how we see everything. And thinking, it changes nothing in the real world, and it changes everything in the real world. In these pieces, if you notice, the horse is in a heart shape, but you kind of have to look for it. You might not notice right away. And the message is that what you look for is what you find. I know a girl, she always thinks people are lying to her. I met a really nice guy and I went on a date with him and I told her, oh, he's really sweet. Poor thing, his wife died of cancer. She said, he's lying. And I said, why would you say that? You don't even know the guy. What would he gain from that? And I tried to imagine what the world looked like to this woman who thinks everybody is lying to her all the time. And conversely, I truly believe that if you look for the best in people and you give them your belief, I think they try to raise to the occasion. But even if they don't, if someone is 90% crummy and 10% good, and you look for the good in them, you're going to see that 10%. So your life is instantly 10% better. You can just ignore the 90%. So these, in this series, I make these heart shapes out of different objects, and they all say love is everywhere on the back. And I have this also in palm trees and flowers and swans, which when I made the swans, I actually didn't realize that swans mate for life, so they turned out to be a very appropriate symbol. Love is everywhere. These are my decision coins. Why waste years of struggle in therapy when you can just flip a coin and make a decision? So originally I made these just for a Christmas gift for be naughty and be nice. And the way it works is they spin in the little holder and it says different things, opposites on the opposite sides. This one is look and leap. I'm a real leap first girl. You know, I rush into things while I'm flying through the air. I'm saying, geez, I wonder how I'm going to get out of this. But you know what? Sometimes people plan too much. The Indians, the American Indians, have an expression. They say you can't cross a chasm in two small steps. Sometimes you got to just run and jump. So this is a look leap decision. This one is very good for the cruise ships. Work out, pig out. Anybody having trouble making a choice here? This one is his way and her way, but by popular demand, I do have a version that says her way on both sides. Happy wife, happy life. You try to get your way, you're never going to get your way. Give her way all the time, you're going to get your way whenever you want it. So her way is not such a bad idea. There is no his way, his way. And this one says gratitude and entitlement. Now, originally, I was thinking that if you have gratitude, you're going to enjoy things in your life. If you have a sense of entitlement, you don't really see what you have because you're always looking, you think you deserve that, and you're looking at what you think you deserve that you don't have, and you just wind up being bitter and nasty. But one of the great things about art is that I can put it out there, an artist puts it out there, but then it grows as it gets reinterpreted. And the first woman that bought one of these, her husband, it was her birthday, and her husband had booted her out of the house for the day. He booked her a whole day at the spa, and he said, now go to Saks Fifth Avenue and buy yourself some things. And she came and she saw this, and she said, my husband tells me I don't have enough sense of entitlement. All I do is take care of him and take care of the kids and take care of everything else. And she was trying to learn to have more sense of entitlement, which I think is a problem that a lot of women have. So, of course, these are all open to interpretation, but it's still about choice. So now you choose happiness, whatever you decide to choose. And the next step for me is freedom. When trappers want to catch a monkey, they put a banana in a cage, and the monkey goes exploring, and he gets his hand between the bars, and he grabs the banana, and he can't get away because he won't drop the banana. And what I've read is that even when the trappers are camping and the monkey's jumping up and down and screaming, all he has to do is drop the banana and leave, but he doesn't drop the banana. And I've showed this to people, and they say, well, that certainly tells us about monkey intelligence. But I think it tells us about ourselves. We all hold on to pain and anger. We don't forgive and forget and move on with our lives. We don't drop the banana. So I am introducing you to Dr. Mann. His first name is Hugh. And by the way, to take the necklace off, you drop the golden banana out of his hand and the ring falls off. Now, for me, freedom is nothing to hide and nothing to prove. For you, freedom could be anything that you want. This little guy, I wanted just to have a little happy face, and there's a quote I wanted to put on the back by Nietzsche, but I couldn't fit the whole quote. I couldn't even fit the word Nietzsche, and I can't even spell Nietzsche. I swear I have to look it up every time. But the quote said, the irrationality of a thing is no argument against its existence, but merely a condition of it. And I kept thinking, why do I love that so much? And I finally boiled it down to this. It's okay to be. You're free to be your own crazy, neurotic, ridiculous, absurd, smart, stupid, whatever. Just be the best of who you are because it's okay to be yourself. Just be free to be. And that's what it says on the back of the smile face. E. Cummings said it takes courage to grow up and be who you really are. Lao Tzu was one of my favorite philosophers from over 5,000 years ago in China. And he said, when you're contented to simply be yourself and don't compare or compete, everybody will respect you. I like to think it's true. Actually, I'm not really sure I care if it's true. I'm not really sure I want everybody to respect me. I would think less of myself if some people did, but never mind. And I always say you have to be yourself anyway because all the other people are taken. Now, when you think about freedom, I wanted to show a heart that's free. And that's why I made the heart out of wings. And on the back, it says forgiveness. More than anything else I know, forgiveness sets your heart free. And sometimes the person you have to forgive is yourself. That for me, that's the hardest one, forgiveness. Choice, freedom, and then we're back to gratitude. This is the bowl overflowing with diamonds. The words love and gratitude I put on the inside. Well, I put on a lot of my jewelry. Originally, um, I was just going to put it on the insides based on a theory on a book called The Hidden Messages of Water, that words affect water and our bodies are made up of water and it'll make women feel better. But it sort of morphed into other words. But I love these words. Look for the best in everyone and everything. Have gratitude. And I believe that's a recipe for happiness. So this series is the bowls overflowing with diamonds, and it's all about gratitude. Now, when I was little, I had it. Someone gave me a dime, and I had this dime in my hand, and I was so excited about it, and I couldn't believe my luck that I had a whole 10 cents, and I could get anything I wanted. And I was running around with my dime, and I was being really careful with it, and and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with it. Mostly, I was just excited to have it, and eventually, I lost it. I couldn't find it anywhere, and I was surprised to find it in my own hot, sweaty little hand. I've been holding it so tight, I forgot it was there, and I couldn't even feel it anymore. And so this is, again, you have to have gratitude, but you have to have gratitude with open heart, open hands. What you have, it comes, it goes, it passes through us, and just enjoy it. And these are the bowls in silver and gold. I also have them now in a silver gold mix. Next, choice, freedom, gratitude, and the next is faith. Now, I'm not talking about an organized religion. If that works for you, that's great. But you have to have faith in something. And for me, I have faith that things just are going to work out. And here I've got diamonds falling from a broken heart. On the back, it says lucky break. And sometimes not getting what you want is the best thing that can happen to you. If I hadn't got laid off from that job in the .com, I wouldn't know I like to make jewelry. If I hadn't lost Saks Fifth Avenue 8 years later, I wouldn't be on cruise ships. That losing Saks that I thought was such a disaster, that spring I had a long driving trip planned where I was going to drive to Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Columbus, touring around all those Saks stores. And instead, I wound up on cruise ships touring the Mediterranean for 2.5 months. But at the time I lost Saks, it looked terrible. And at first I tried crying and hiding under the pillow, but that wasn't really a very good way to earn a living. I hadn't worn my lucky break for a long time, and I got it out, and I was just holding on to it while I was wearing it, and I was just telling myself, just breathe and just have faith. You've been here before where things look bad, things are going to work out. And I started lightening up. And as I lightened up, I started doing things. And I rented a booth out at the Equestrian Festival. So instead of being in Saks Fifth Avenue in the freezing cold and the rules, don't stand there, don't set up there, put da 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 da, I wound up standing out in the sunshine with the dressage and the show jumpers and Bruce Springsteen and Madonna, whose kids are out there, and everybody hanging out and having a good time. And then I got on the cruise ships. So my theory is, before you upset yourself about what's good or bad, have faith that it's going to work out. Have faith in whatever works for you. And here we have the words on the back. Diamonds falling from the broken heart. It's a lucky break. If the heart didn't break, the diamonds wouldn't have fallen out. The next concept, choice, freedom, gratitude, faith, is change. People are so afraid of change. But you know what? If you're in a bad situation, then don't worry about it. It's going to change. And if you're in a great situation, be in the moment and enjoy it, because that's going to change too. I love to have a lot of jewelry that has lots of changeable things. So these are rings that you can pull apart and stack in lots of different ways. I'm just showing them with the ones that I make, but you can stack these with rings you have already. These are the daisies. The center unscrews so you can put different color combination, and you can clip. I have lots of pearl enhancers that you can clip onto pearls. This is a black tourmaline choker. You can take that same bowl, clip it onto the pearls. The pearls are actually a 48-inch lariat that you can wear dozens of different ways. You can also put those on cords on different kinds of gemstones. Change is a good thing. Now, what better way to represent change than the ocean? Now, I love this piece just because it took me 3 months to figure out how to put the ocean into a piece of jewelry. I mean, it's big, it's flat, it covers the whole world. But what better metaphor for change? Now, back to Lao Tzu and the Taoists. They talk about water flowing down a mountain. When water comes to a rock, it doesn't make the rock move. The water just flows around the rock. Now, which is stronger? The water, because it flows around, or the rock, because the rock says, I'm a rock. I'm not moving, you move. Well, if you think about it, sure, the rock makes the water move, but the water eventually wears the rock into pebbles and into sand. So if you think about it, and this is what Taoism is all about, it's about following the path of least resistance. It's about taking your power from, from the natural way of the universe. Instead of, it's like judo, instead of blocking someone's punch, you just step back and use their own power to flip them right over. And I find in my life, when I do this, like, I'm not saying don't try hard. For sure, if you want something, go out, sweat, work your butt off to get what you want. And when you think you failed, keep trying and trying and trying. But if something is really not going to happen, then just stop and look around and find where you can take your power from following the path of least resistance and the opportunities that are probably right in front of you. Choice, freedom, gratitude, faith, change, and now we get to illusion. Socrates said, if I know one thing, it's that I know nothing. Now, he was a really smart guy. Now, how are you going to remember that you know nothing? You can carve it and you can staple it to your head. I tried that, but I broke the stapler. The way I remind myself that nothing is what it seems is with the Ruffle collection. If you see, this looks really light and delicate, but it's actually really, really solid. And the message is, nothing is what it seems. If you meet someone and you don't like them, go back and look for the magic in them. Some of my lifelong friends started out being people I thought I didn't like. If you think you're in a bad situation, just remember, we aren't very smart. Nothing is what it seems. And when you think about all the things that we can be wrong about, we can be wrong about things that didn't happen yet, things that did happen, what's good or bad, science, people, truth, God, etc. We have the ability of being profoundly wrong about a lot of things. I love Mark Twain. He said, it ain't what you don't know that causes trouble, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so. He also talked about how we torture ourselves worrying about things. He said, I've suffered through some terrible experiences in my life, and a few of them actually happened. And the people that won't open themselves to light and truth, and they're just sure that they know everything, I call them, Wendell Berry. I love this quote, the mind that is not baffled is not employed. And the people that are sure about everything, I call often wrong, never in doubt. So this is the Ruffle ring, and I have also earrings. So now, I think if you do these things, you understand that choice, you have choices on everything. You're free, you have gratitude, you have faith, you accept change, you understand illusion. Now it's time to celebrate. And life is a celebration, so I have these fireworks collection. I will tell you, sometimes, originally when I made them, it was just about celebrating, but one guy bought them for his wife, and he was not doing the right thing. And I told him about my dad, and my dad, at his funeral, not one person cried. And I told this guy, I said, when you look at your wife wearing these, I want you to ask yourself if you want your life to be a celebration or if you want your death to be a celebration. It's a little harsh, but I think it's better when he's still young that he knows that's a possibility than waiting till the end. These are the fireworks I have in lots of different sizes in silver and gold. Now, when I was almost 30, my youngest brother, Brian, he said, Jane, I don't understand. He said, you've been on your butt so many times. Why don't you play it safe? Every time you fall, you just get up and you brush yourself off and you run harder and you jump higher. Why don't you just play it safe? And I didn't really have an answer until a couple of years ago. I read this quote from Michelangelo. It said, the greater danger for most is not setting our sights too high and falling short, but setting our sights too low and achieving our mark. So it's important always to reach for the stars. And there we have. These are stars. This is my brand new star ring. This was actually a computer drawing, but I have the actual ring here now. Now, for some people, reaching for the stars is sometimes a little bit more than they can do. These are boxing gloves. I also have this in a pendant. And when my friend Nancy was battling multiple myeloma, about a year before she passed away, I gave her one of the boxing gloves and I just said, please keep fighting. I need you around. But when you think back to the lucky break concept, Nancy, she said, you know, Jane, as painful as this has been, I wouldn't change it for anything. And I knew exactly what she was talking about because during the 10 years that she fought her illness, I watched her body deteriorate, but her spirit and her soul became free in a way I'd never seen before. She and I had been friends for over 10 years before that, and she did carry around a lot of pain and bitterness and anger from her childhood, and she was free. So, this is sadly, I've given away more boxing gloves than I've sold. So now we have your everything's set, you're happy and you're celebrating. Now it's time to give back. And this is going to boost your happiness in a way that's beyond reason. Um, when I think I'm having a bad day, I do this little exercise in my head. I picture all the people lined up from the luckiest to the unluckiest. And I take a few moments to picture the lucky line as people sit there crossing their arms and scratching their head and shifting their weight. And I think about the people down the wrong end of the lucky line, like in Somalia, with lives that are unimaginable to us. And and I think about them, and then I think about what I thought was giving me a bad day. And even when I'd been assaulted, and it wasn't the first time, but this time I was like struggling with a little PTSD, and I wasn't having trouble getting settled. But I was in Palm Beach. I pulled my car over to the side of the road. I'm looking at the palm trees and the azure sea and the blue sky, and I'm thinking about the lucky line, and I'm thinking, really, really, I'm going to let this get to me. Everything else, this, no. All that was really bruised was my spirit and my ego, and that's my responsibility. So horseshoes represent good luck. These horseshoes are overflowing with good luck, and they say lucky you on the back. But the trick is not just to use somebody in your mind and your heart to feel good about yourself. The real trick to this exercise is to go and try to find somebody on the wrong end of the lucky line and help them. And if you find someone that you have the ability to help and that they allow you to help them, don't look for thanks and don't tell anyone you did it. You should actually be thanking them, because when you help somebody, it lifts you so much. And I see people that want their names on buildings because they donate the money. I really believe they're robbing themselves. I think doing good secretly is going to be the most powerful thing you can do. It's just between you and your soul. So lucky you if someone lets you help them. And this is the lucky you ring. And now, this to me is the most important part of the whole story. As I grow and as I travel the world, I discover the lie of otherness and the truth of oneness and how important this is. This piece was inspired by the butterfly effect. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm smart enough to understand quantum mechanics and string theory, but I found the butterfly effect captivating. It's a mathematical model of the entire universe that proves numerically that we are so physically connected that if a butterfly flaps its wings in the Amazon, in as little as 2 weeks, the air currents it creates can make a storm in Chicago. And I think if we're so connected physically, how connected are we spiritually? And every time you make someone smile or do a random act of kindness, or every time you snap at somebody, how does that resonate out through the world? And so my worst personality flaw is that if I'm doing my job and someone's in my way, I get very frustrated and that horrible voice comes out and you can't unring a bell. So I wear this to remind myself always to be careful and kind. And I would practice on little things. In New York, where wait is a 4-letter word, I never ask anyone to get out of my way. And sometimes, someone's blocking the aisle in the supermarket deciding between cornflakes or raisin bran, and sometimes, they move on, and sometimes they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, I'm sorry. And I say, it's all right, don't worry about it. And you can actually see a little peacefulness resonate. And I like to think that that resonates out with them. So oneness is really, really important. But I also am going to tell you that when I was little, I felt like I was trapped inside my own skin. Now, we have a need to create oneness. That's why we get married, we have families, we have communities, we have teams, we have countries. We keep creating this oneness with the things that we know. But the problem is that all those things create otherness on the other side. And I know from my experience, the more I experience oneness, the more buoyant my life is. And the less that I am, the less ego, then the more I experience myself. I know it's illogical, but I know it's true. So I'm going to tell you, I travel around the world a lot. I've done a lot of things. I've met a lot of people. Now, first, we look at things through the prism of our own experience. So these two little kids in Vietnam look like they're out playing. Doesn't he look like the Vietnamese Huckleberry Finn? But if you notice, their hands are turned upwards because they're not playing, they're working. And they're, I don't know who this woman is, if it's a handler or mom, they row them out to the tenders to beg for dollars. And they work from early in the morning till very late at night. And it's easy to look at these kids. This girl's named Pat. This was in Cambodia. Here's Pat with all her friends. They were all out working. It's easy to look at these kids and think that they're different from us and different from you and me. But let me tell you how lucky I was to meet Pat. She spoke English very well, could not ask me enough questions about my life and about New York and America. And finally she said, Jane, are you married? Do you have a boyfriend? And I said, not at the moment, Pat. And she said, do you want me to introduce you to a nice Cambodian boy? And so I asked her, I said, Pat, do you have a boyfriend? And she explained she's too young, but if she stays in school, she was permitted to choose her own boyfriend. And I asked her what she was going to look for in a boyfriend, and she thought about it, and she said, well, I want someone who's nice to me, who's fun to be with, and has a good job. And I told her she better watch out because I'm looking for the same guy, and if I find him first, I'm going to take him. And by the way, if any of you know that guy, could you please send him over? These kids are just like us. Now, I know a lot of people, and I'm comfortable in people with the most in the world and people with the least. When my brother Brian, my youngest brother, started running for Congress, I started calling up friends. Brian is the most profoundly decent human being I've ever met in my life, and we need him in Washington. So I started calling all my friends to support him and donate. Brian called me back. He said, Jane, you know more one percenters than anyone I've ever met in my life. You know these guys, that's Chris Noth from Sex and the City and Chris McDonald and Robert Klein. And here's Don King, Vander Holyfield. There's me taking a shot at a career that was never going to happen because I don't want anyone to mess up the nose I paid for. That's Jerzy Kaczynski. You guys remember him? He wrote Being There. And Bill Boggs, talk show host. And here's me, actually just equally as comfortable with children, with the people that have the absolute least in the world, people that don't want anything in the world. This was one of the most intriguing days I've ever spent in my life. I was in Oman, and I wound up going with a complete stranger. We had had 3 words of conversation. When I saw him, there was a water cooler on the street, and I asked him, don't the people have water in their homes? He said, you want to come and see a home? And I said, yeah, I do. And I went with this Pakistani guy over like bombed out lots and rubble and back streets to this home where 20 Pakistani guys live in a tiny room together. They have 1-foot cubes. I can show you pictures later where they keep their belongings. And one of the guys, I had met, spoke English very well, and we all sat on the floor and asked each other questions. I thought it was a lot more interesting. The questions they asked me, some of them were really heartbreaking, as they said things like, why does America keep making war on the world? And why does America support Israel after Israel made 9/11? And, I could go on and on about this day that I spent with these guys. It was fascinating. But I'm telling you that everybody is the same all over the world. Now, when I say this, I want you to get still. This is called peace of heart. You see the peace symbol inside of the heart. And there's diamonds overflowing that runs through my work. And on the back, it actually says peace of heart. Now, I'm going to give you a concept that you're not going to like, because I didn't even like it when I thought it. But I always tell people you define your core values and you live by those core values, even when it's unpleasant, not easy, when you don't want to, because they'll guide you through the ambiguous situations. So I was watching on BBC News, there was a child sacrifice in Uganda. And the way it works is if someone wants their business to be better, they go to the witch doctor, they pay him money, and the witch doctor kidnaps and murders a child. And this is supposed to make your business better. And I'm looking at these disgusting people, and I'm thinking, if I believe in oneness, I can't just have oneness with the beautiful little children. I have to have oneness with the people that row them out to the ships and with the witch doctor and the people that pay the witch doctor. So then I ask myself, who prays for the devil? Now, this is not devil worship. This is hyperbole. I'm exaggerating to make a point. So, and it's not the attitude of the ship or anybody else. This is just my thoughts, and I'm just asking a question to ask. So we look at the Bible, we look at the story, and the way I understand it, the devil used to be an angel, and he's hanging out there with God up in heaven, and they're best buddies. And one day he says, can we play fair? Can we just switch places for a little while? Let me go there and you come here. Come on, let's just play fair. And God says, oh, no, you don't. And you're down. And all your friends that liked you and think that's a good idea, they're down too. And that's what made the devil. So if in the Bible, if you look at this and Jesus says everybody gets forgiveness and you love your enemy as you love yourself, then why doesn't the worst of all get free will? Why don't we pray for him to turn around and be good and do good? Why doesn't anybody pray for the devil? Well, let's take this out of theory and let's put this into life and into action. And I want to talk about why this concept, when you pull it back again into your own life, can make a difference, not just in our lives, but in the whole world. I'm going to tell you, this is called Peace to the World. On the inside are the words love and gratitude. The peace symbol faces out for everyone to see. Now, I was in a situation where I never believed in evil until a few years ago. And a very bad person came into my life, and I told the truth about him to help other people. And he was really, really angry, but he couldn't do anything for me telling the truth. So what happened was I was framed for something I didn't do. And I didn't even know it was going on. And then he sued me for something that I had nothing to do with. And in a difficult economy, when I'm trying to make a living, I had to find a lot of money to pay a lawyer in Cleveland to defend me against this made-up lawsuit. And I was really, really getting down. I was getting down about this bad guy and about, it was really challenging. A lot of things were piling on me at once. And then, just to make it worse, I felt like a big fake, because here I am talking about finding happiness, and I wasn't happy, and I couldn't kind of get my balance back. And it was really getting on top of me when suddenly I thought about it, and I started thinking about I was betraying my own core values, that we're all one. We all have good and bad in us. And I realized this guy started out an innocent little baby just like you and me, and someone did something to him to make him the way he is. And whoever did that, someone did something to them too. And I started thinking about his life, and I started thinking he's never going to love anybody because he has so much contempt for people that he can't feel love, and no one's ever going to love him, and he knows it because he lies, and all they can ever see is lies, so they can't see who he really is. So anyway, suddenly I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and I started feeling sorry for him. And when I gave him my compassion, the buoyancy came back to my life. So I started out with life being a sea of misery with little islands of happiness, and now I know that happiness is home, and sometimes I might lose my way a little bit, but all the things that I'm talking about today are going to guide me home again. And I really believe we can get there. I know people think I'm naive, but I really do believe that we can have peace in the world. It starts with me, it starts with you, it starts with us sharing this step by step with the people in our lives. This is a peace, love, and abundance ring. This is a gift ring. Some people asked me recently, how do I know how to design if I never studied design? But I'm just going to tell you, as an artist, we create using gifts. We don't create the gifts. And when I'm done with my body, the gift's going to go on to somebody else. I don't really look at art as mine. It's not a monologue, it's a conversation. So without you to carry the message forward, then it's not art, it's lifeless. I don't think lifeless has anything to do with art. And the greatest gift you can give someone is to teach them how to be happy. The best way to teach is to lead by example. The best way to learn is to teach. And so I say, just give yourself away to teach yourself and to find yourself. And if one of these pieces resonates with you, if it's a message that maybe you think will support you or somebody you love, then come to the jewelry shop. I've got pieces in gold and silver and all kinds of price points. If you want, I can swap out diamonds for white sapphires or CZs. Just come and buy something that's going to work for you and help people in your life. We're running short of time, so I'm going to go real quick. We're all candles. We've been lit by other candles. We light others in return. Nobody can claim the light of their own, but we all enjoy the ever-increasing light. So I invite you all to be candles with me. Um, I want you to know I personally stand behind all of my work. I'm going to skip through all this because we're running short of time. Each one of my pieces, I can explain this to you later if you're interested, but I'll just tell you each piece has many different artisans in New York that work on this. It's not any one person, they're all craftsmen in their own right. And I want to thank you for joining me, and I invite you to come find me in the shop or at my pearl stringing table, or if you see me around the ship, stop me and share your stories with each other and with me. And thank you very much.